And it's an informational briefing on unmanned aerial systems being experimented on in Kansas agriculture. And today we have with us Lucas Koch, the Chief Executive Officer of Kelly Hills Unmanned Systems. Welcome to the committee.
There we go. Good to go. Awesome. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Really appreciate the invitation from Chairman Francis and the support we've had from Chairman Avery Anderson as we kind of have gone along here. I'll be talking a little bit today about Kelly Hills Unmanned Systems, how we're innovating future technology in agriculture and firefighting in the state of Kansas here. And we'll be sure to make sure we get a distributable copy of this to everybody as soon as we get out of here. So let's see. Next slide. We might just say next slide. All right. My name is Lucas Koch. I'm the CEO here at Kelly Hills Unmanned Systems. We are a subsidiary of Heinen Brothers Agri Services. I have my boss and one of the founders of Heinen Brothers Ag here, Glenn. I'll be talking them up in a little bit. I'm Nemaha County native, 7th generation from a farm family. Always was around innovation. Grandpa liked to build his own equipment. Dad was in the ag GPS space. Ag technology is near and dear to my heart. Went to a little 1A school called Centralia High School. After I graduated there, had a small track and field scholarship and got my bachelor's and master's at Kansas State. So big K-Staters, where I met my wife, Katie, and the boys and I. We have 2 boys right now, and we all live outside of Onega. So moved back home. After college, I took a job at a big venture-backed ag technology company based out of Boston, but a little territory of mine was in Larned. So we lived in Larned for a while, and then I had territory west of the Rockies. So got experience and good connections out on the western side of the state, also on the eastern side. And after a little bit of time there, decided I wanted to go back and help out a business that was pre-established and had the same values as me. Loved agriculture and loved the USA. So I found my way back to Kelly, Kansas, Seneca, Kansas, and that's where the Heinen Brothers operate at. So Heinen Brothers started in 1994 with Scott and Glenn. So Glenn's here today. 1 airplane, radial engine, small airplane, and they kind of just grew from there. So they have service customers across the whole state. We're also the firefighting seat program. So we use our airplanes to help the Kansas Forestry Service with firefighting. And as things grew with the airplanes, in the off season, they said, hey, maybe we're not busy enough. We should get into ag retail. Hey, maybe we're not busy enough. We should pick up the farming and we should do ground rig. And they really built a nice business here, employs 65 people in Kansas, and has allowed folks like me to move back home and live in rural America and continue to push innovation. So along the way, they said, hey, we've got a lot of these airplanes sitting around and we use them all the time, but we think drones are the future. And one short story that Scott, the other brother, likes to share is that his dad used to put fly nets on the horses when he woke up in the morning. That was his job. And now they can put him in a big John Deere tractor, and it's basically kind of a big robot. You press a couple buttons and it moves on. And so, someday, why wouldn't there be a bunch of drones kind of assisting or helping the airplanes? It only makes sense. So we went on a mission to find kind of the latest, greatest technology. And that's kind of how all of Kelly Hills began. So what Kelly Hills is a business on a mission, and we want to improve safety of the pilots that are there. We want to address some of the labor concerns, right? Hard to find good ground rig applicators, hard to find help. Labor is always a constant concern everywhere across the state. And then we want to help move in the next phase of precision agriculture. We think autonomous actions can help do that. Drone is one way. So in June of 2024, we joined forces with the FAA and were awarded a UAS test range. So inside of this range, you can build anything in your garage, and within a couple days, we can be flying it. So it breeds innovation, right? You have an idea, let's get in the air, let's see if it works, and let's do it safely. So safety is a big piece. We got a lot of pilots we want to protect. We got a lot of pilots we don't want going in dangerous fields because we want them to go home to their families, and we think drones are a great place to put in those situations. What makes this unique, obviously, is a relationship with the FAA, and then we're a privately held business, and they saw a need for a test range of this nature. So the test range program started in 2012, established by the FAA to test all sorts of new drones that you can think of. So there are 7 of these in the U.S., and ours is one that is obviously privately held, and we're focused on the commercialization of agriculture and firefighting. So a lot of the other test ranges focus on maybe some DoD work or doing a lot of just testing for testing's sake, and let's gather some data. And we said we do want to do all that, but we want to help these companies who are building these new drones get into the hands of actual farmers who can use them, especially with some of the questions around the Chinese drones and the CCP and this type of technology. Something like this is imperative to helping those American and allied drones find a safety threshold inside of the United States so that we can all use them. Obviously, flying drones is very important, and to do that in an autonomous way, you need to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight. So it's a term people use all the time, but flying them when people can't see the drone, that's really how you start to unlock a lot of precision agriculture benefits, especially here on Conservation Day. If you can do some spot spraying and your drone's going out there autonomously every single day, there's a really nice way to still manage all of your crops, but maybe save some chemical on the side. And that's a savings that gets pushed all the way down to the farm gate. So a way for farmers to have new tools and save money, and for people like us to have new services to service those fields better.
Do you mind if we stop and ask a question at this point? Will it throw you off?
No, you're good.
Okay, Representative Delperdane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is unusual. We usually wait. Could you go back to the previous slide, please? Right there. What is a Class G airspace? I'm not familiar.
Sure. Yep. I was warned about this. So the Class G airspace, it basically means low ground population. So as far as the FAA is concerned, Class G airspace, there's not too much going on there. And maybe even they just aren't even sure how many people even live in Class G airspace. Obviously, I know a bunch of people who live in Class G airspace, but yep.
I guess my comment is it should be in western Kansas instead of eastern Kansas.
Yeah, we can help with that. Don't you worry.
Representative Proctor.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the map and there's a lot of, are they separating the aircraft that are being tested by altitude, or how are they separating from the regular air traffic that's going between these cities?
Correct, yeah, altitude. And we have to coordinate with the Air Traffic Control Center daily, every day. If we're gonna fly, they're the ones who tell us if we can go or not. So yeah, it's completely working with the FAA, even down to our local air traffic control. So, yep.
Representative Minnix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my prior life, I am a pilot, and Class G is basically one of the least restrictive, and it's below a certain altitude. I think it's like 12 or 1,800 feet. You get into the little donut hole there with Kansas City airport and stuff. You're getting into Class Bs and Cs, and they're far more restrictive, and it's a concentration point for planes taking off and landing, so that's an area you want to avoid. But most of the rest of that is in the area where it's 1,000 population or less, no big problems.
Anybody else have a question for the presenter? Representative Weigel. And we might, were you going to cover that later in your presentation?
Yep. Next slide. We're covering next slide.
That's one of the deals. When we start letting questions,
yep. They can be quite large. Basically, Yeah, as large as you can really dream up. But
Well,
Right.
when you said that you were increasing the payload by making the drone bigger.
Yep.
So, and what I like the idea of this because not only is it good for agriculture, but it also helps in range fires and like that. So, can they carry um, like hundreds of gallons of water or whatever
Yes.
they're carrying?
Yep.
Okay. And one other, and then the other part of this question is, when you're talking about beyond visual line of sight and radar,
Yep.
and I noticed that, you're saying, in your last sentence here that, they're being invested, for good economic returns in Oklahoma, Texas, Alaska, and North Dakota.
You bet.
Well, I've been to all four of those states, and Texas, Alaska, and North Dakota are wide open states.
Hmm.
Oklahoma, not so much. Are there any things that are jumping out at you, so to speak, in Oklahoma that the other three states don't have to deal with, or am I just speculating on that?
Um, every state is kind of picking kind of their own little avenue or angle that they want to take to bring into more of a commerce aspect, right? To gain commerce for their state. And I have a slide on that at the end that kind of gives little examples of how each states have positioned. So that might be able to answer some of those.
So all four states can pretty much operate the same way? Is that,
They're taking different approaches in beyond visual line of sight flight. Ours is agriculture and fire. They're doing probably some things we're not even privy to knowing, but they are taking different avenues there.
all right. Well,
Sounds
thank you very
good.
much.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead.
All right, great. So, kind of the cornerstone of where this got started and why we needed a test range and what would we be flying there is this. So this is the largest drone ever approved by the FAA for commercial operations. This is a company from California, Silicon Valley. They had a lot of need and a lot of interest in the United States, but they weren't sure where to go. So we started by becoming a commercial launch partner with this company called Pica. This bird is basically 40 feet wide, can hold 100 gallons, and is fully autonomous. So it takes off from the airport runway, flies the field, comes home, lands, taxis itself over to the little loading area, shuts down. You load it up, give it new batteries, and send it on its way. So we viewed this as a really exciting step forward of how do we keep our pilots safe and how do we bring new tools to the table to feed an ever-growing population in the world. And something like this is very exciting. As we started to build this relationship with this company, we found dozens of other companies from the US and allied countries that said, hey, we're interested in what you're doing with Pica, and we want to use the test range. And we found a bunch of clients who were flying into Kansas City and driving over to Seneca and hanging out at our little conference table and saying, this is what we're working on in country X, Y, or Z. We'd love to get that into the United States. How do we do that? And so part of that is obviously, here's a slide here of countries of technology that we're working with, right? So these people who fly into the US. And I guess the last key point on this slide would be anybody who builds a technology company that's focused in agriculture anywhere in the world use the United States as the best place that they could imagine their company or technology thriving. So everybody, if there's a way or a path forward, would love to get into the United States. And that's something that's a great benefit for us because we get to see this technology. But the question is, how do you commercialize it? How does it actually work down at the farm gate and bring everybody value and make agriculture even more resilient?
Hey, could you read what each of those zones stands for? I can't read it from here.
Yep, so
The red and the
you bet.
blue, and yeah.
Yep. So kind of the hash lines, that's just a combo of hardware and software companies. The blue is ag software companies, so a company that focuses on software only. And then the red is a company who focuses on hardware only. So not too important of details on that front, but more just a really nice depiction of folks who are interested in getting to the United States and seeing Kansas as a great place to launch. So through these questions we're getting, how do we involve ourselves in the test range, and how do we find footing in the United States? I lean on my relationships and partnerships because obviously we have a keen interest in flying these and using these machines, but as far as maybe convincing a company to stay here with the incentives we have, why don't you just move your company and set it up inside of the United States? Isn't Kansas a fantastic place for that? The center of aviation and agriculture, kind of the crossroads there. So I won't go through all of the folks on this list here, but we have a great relationship with the Kansas Department of Transportation. We've had fantastic support from Secretary Reed, and the Director of Aviation, Ray Seif, and team have been supportive, and we work on similar ideas and collaborative efforts together. Department of Commerce, we met with Joshua Jefferson, and he has even come out to Kelly Hills and Seneca and discussed what is a roadmap here to help these companies stay into the state, and you know, what can we have to offer? How do we get on the board there? Got great relationships with Wichita State and both Kansas State Salina and Kansas State Manhattan campus. Very deep relationships there, working on similar projects together. One other one that I'd like to point out on here is Thales. They're kind of a multinational aviation company, but they've got an office out in Leawood. So they're helping us find this roadmap for beyond visual line of sight flight, the future of how we get these in the air and kind of use them. Also, we've had fantastic support from federal delegations. So, you know, folks from Moran's team and Marshall team and others have come to Kelly Hills and have viewed it and love to help and support. And we've also gone to Washington, D.C. on the federal level and had discussions with them in D.C. about, you know, how do we help kind of continue to grow this initiative inside of the state? How do we really make a move as far as the future of aviation? One very neat opportunity that we had as we kind of grew this out and began to get notoriety, we gained a little national recognition, and I was asked to kind of inform the National Economic Council and National Security Council on issues around drone supply chain, specifically in the wake of this Chinese CCP drone technology situation that we're in. Obviously, Kelly Hills is very well positioned to help allied technology find footing and get into the hands of growers and make their lives and operations more successful. This meeting had about 50 people, and we were one of 3 companies who represented agriculture. So kind of a small group there, but those other 2 symbols up there are some drone groups who are in Washington, D.C. and do educating efforts for the drone industry. So unique opportunity there. This is our business model. Again, we'll get you guys these slides, so no worries about any of that, but we're very unique. So the thing that makes us unique is that we're privately held, and we have the interests of the growers and the users and the landowners, right, for firefighting in our best interest. We use these FAA programs, so the test range program, also a member of the Beyond program with KDOT, and then the Assure program with K-State, Salina, and Wichita. We're focusing on this commercialization effort of ag and firefighting. We are wanting to push the envelope in a very safe way of how to get these to fly and kind of propagate throughout throughout Kansas in the beyond visual line of sight environment. And our impact can easily be felt through government and industry and grower collaborations. We're seeing a bunch of technology workers from kind of all over the world kind of trickle into Kansas and say, oh, so it's actually not, you know, insane to land in Kansas City and spend time here, and there's commerce and there's places we can stay and it's affordable, and Kansas is an attractive place. And we really want to harness those relationships that we're building and kind of, you know, help the state. It kind of helps everybody. It makes a better product for the grower, a better product for us, and then these companies have a fantastic place to launch even more products in the future. Here's a slide I was talking about, the economic impact. So other notable states who have taken large investments into the drone side of things. North Dakota invested 118 million, and that spurred about 400 million of private investment. They really have been a leader. I think how I like to explain to people is that I kind of view this whole next generation of aviation as a race. We don't, as if we're running. But right now, we're not exactly sure how long the race is or what position we're in. But just because somebody's out in front at the very beginning doesn't mean they win the race, especially if we don't know how long the race is. So Kansas is making nice consolidated efforts and teaming up. We have all the power here and the ability to make really good progress. Alaska is a good leader in there too. As noted before, very open. They have a lot of other things they're focusing on that is not agriculture and firefighting, but have had companies set up remote locations there and have been building out the drone side there. Oklahoma, according to this Mercatus study out of George Mason, was ranked #1 for drone readiness. Kansas was in that study ranked 32nd. I think there's probably some debate that can obviously go on there, and I've heard that there was some debate on this. But obviously, I think we can do better. We can be ranked higher than that, and that we have all of the power here to do so and make a good position for ourselves. Texas, kind of the hub of package delivery, surprisingly. So as we noted before, we kind of try to stay away from big airports. In Texas, they kind of worked with DFW Airport and have been working on package delivery underneath that special airspace to all of the people who live in the area. And for 2 years running, have been running that program and delivering packages and have had no disruptions. So that's kind of the future. People are working on that kind of package delivery angle. Texas is also known for autonomous trucking. So they've got big 18-wheelers with sensors all over the side. They still have a driver inside, but in Texas, those things are navigating roads, and it's futuristic. And Oregon has done a pretty good job of using these FAA programs like a test range and then layering in an incubator that would incubate businesses and help them grow. And then the town where that is at in Oregon is called Pendleton, and it has just boomed over the last 10 years. They built 2 new, one Marriott and one Hampton Inn out on the edge of town because so many people were moving there from Amazon and Verizon and others, and they didn't have anywhere to put them. So it's been a great, there's a lot of case studies here, right, that we've seen this is successful to invest more in this type of technology and in a way that we can be different and kind of carve out our own niche. So in closing, I just have this little video. There's no volume. It might be a little laggy, but we had our grand opening last year. We invited folks from all across the ag value chain to come to Seneca and to see the largest spray drone in the world operate, kind of get their gears turning. This is an autonomous helicopter that was there. So a lot of really big systems that are out there that are finding their way, and we're helping them do that. At this event, there was about 120 companies represented from 30 states and 6 different countries, and all of them kind of focusing around the future of ag technology and seeing that Kansas is a pretty fantastic place. And it all clicked once they got to Seneca, and they're like, oh, we see the vision now, we see how this is working, and we're finding our avenues of how we can get our piece of the pie in that too. So nothing too crazy here. Pretty good timing. It's at the end. And then the last slide here is just kind of a thank you slide, and then some pictures of what AI thinks spray drones will look like. Maybe some 747s running over churches and all sorts of good stuff. So.
All right, committee questions. Do we have any left? Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what's sort of the state of regulation on this? Is the FAA okay with autonomous aircraft flying airport to airport? Passengers allowed? What's kind of the state of the regulation at federal or state level right now?
Great question. So right now they're operating within their programs. So inside of a test range program, if you're a member of that and following the rules correctly, you can start to do more of these advanced operations, as you say, airport to airport. Yes, that has been done. Is it a regular occurrence? No, because it has to be done inside of the test range. Can people be on board? Right now, you cannot autonomously fly people around, even inside of the test range. You cannot do that. You can have a pilot in a seat of in an aircraft that's operating in an autonomous way, but they still have full control of taking over. But as far as some autonomous missions of moving people around in a commercial environment, that hasn't been done yet.
Do you have any idea, like, is there regulations that are in the works at the FAA to broaden this outside of the test ranges? Is it something the state could do?
Of course, yeah. So, great question. So, as far as beyond visual line of sight equipment, so radar equipment, the FAA is leaving that up to the states. Obviously, that's different than airplanes because the FAA owns their surveillance equipment. So that's why each state is kind of picking their own position. As far as, sorry, what was the other part of that question?
I was just asking, so is it something that we can deregulate at the state level and allow it to work, or does it have to come from kind of the
Right.
federal?
Okay, understood. So the other part of that is, yes, they're working on coming up with a better framework for this, and that was codified in the FAA reauth. So the reauthorization states in there they have to set up a UAS-specific division of the FAA and actually come up with guidelines and rules so we have something to follow. Obviously, if you're familiar with aviation, there's just a set of rules and you follow it, you build your aircraft, you get your type cert or your license and you're good to go. We don't have that on drones yet. Other countries are taking different angles, and we're seeing a lot of this technology, for example, right now, just fleeing to Brazil. There's no easier place to fly than Brazil. And as you know, they're an ally, but also a very big competitor in the ag space. This is the last place we want everybody running to, and we get stuck here with, with not as much good technology as them. So.
Representative Bohai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So it's my understanding that we could be soon getting kind of like packages delivered to our homes. And I think we wouldn't necessarily be in the test space. My question is, do drones have the ability to know other drones are in the area? Or is that mainly just FFA?
Right. So in the package delivery space, it's a little different because you're flying at different elevations and different environment. They do have the ability to know if there's other aircraft in the air and at a certain elevation, such as high as maybe a package delivery drone is flying, they'll be able to use the same protocols as aircraft do and understand where they are. And certainly Google and Amazon and, big corporations such as that have been putting a lot of money for design and research into this, which is how they got it working in Dallas, and I would imagine out in Kansas City and other big areas that they're wanting to do that. And I think personally that will be a very attractive thing for a lot of people, not have to go fight traffic just for a can of corn or something.
Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I loved your presentation. I've always been really enthused about low altitude flying. We actually could get down low enough to herd beef cattle with a B-52. So, but my question has to deal with all the technology that has to be involved. I assume that you're very deeply into GPS coordinates and navigation and all that to establish the boundaries of the space that's going to be sprayed. At what altitude would you spray a soybean field or a corn field?
Yeah, normally you're 10 to 15 feet off the ground, so basically touching it. And
pretty good if it's a level field.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, my boss Glenn is a crop dusting pilot now, so he knows all about it and can definitely fill us in on that. Drones will be similar, but maybe a little easier for them. They have sensors on board that can help sense this. Not as good as the human eyeball, but we're getting there.
Is there some way to load the topography of the field that is going to be sprayed into the navigation system so that you know your highest point and your lowest point?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that made that pica bird so unique is that they build a LiDAR map first to get the topography, and then they just run based on anomalies. So is there, I know what the field is like. If there's a person or a tractor there, it says, oh, there's something in this map that wasn't there before. So it can even unlock nighttime spraying. I mean, it knows exactly where it's going, it knows what's there, and it knows what's missing. So when we were doing testing with it, we had a windsock that was moving left and right, and it kept flagging it and saying, there's something there, or there's nothing here. Well, the windsock would just be in a different position than when we ran the LiDAR map. So we could update it and say that's a safe place to run.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I also assume that drift is an important factor, because if you're spraying one field for one thing and the drift carries the spray over to an adjacent field that the farmer or the rancher doesn't want sprayed, you could actually be in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that really plays in our favor there is the wind. So naturally, just Mother Nature flying at the right time with the right wind. But to go back to the partnership bit, I mean, that's where I lean on state universities and research environments such as like the USDA to help us come up with programs to say, yes, this is a good spray system, or no, it's not, so that we know and the farmers know what level of technology they're buying.
And my last, if I may, we drive in Kansas, and along a lot of the agricultural fields, you got power lines.
Yep.
And I assume that, again, that the altitude and location of those power lines is all programmed into your navigation systems. So you can avoid those, or either spray parallel to the lines, and if you're going perpendicular, you better know when to start climbing, et cetera.
Yep. And furthermore, it will show you where the power lines are based on this topography map, and it'll show you the path it's going to take before you ever take off. You can say, well, maybe next to these power lines, we should run parallel instead of running against them. You can change it.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I look forward to seeing what develops in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So just a question. So is this more a little bit like the Roomba that vacuums the floor in my house than it is like the kid sitting on the road with a joystick?
Yeah, yep. That we think in order to commercialize, it'll be more of autonomy and less having to drive to the edge of a field, deploy a system that will fly for 7 minutes and land on the trailer again. We want it to be autonomous and flying from people's fields.
And then how are you going to develop your maps in a time efficient manner if you're happen to well, like if you're firefighting, I mean, you're not going to have a pre-made map.
Yeah, firefighting, definitely a different situation. In agriculture, in the off season, you could be using the drones to build your maps and then kind of operating off there, knowing in a certain field, hey, we took out some trees or we built a house. I mean, we have to do that as aerial applicators already, responsibly update your map so you know what's going on. So it'd be similar environment. In firefighting, you're not flying as low to the ground when you're dropping the water or retardant. So kind of a different situation, but you're dealing with smoke and higher winds, and all of that is still, it's a little bit earlier or farther behind than the ag drones are because it's such a unique situation.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar question. So building on this, how does this change a day-to-day for an aerial application business? You're now monitoring, because I mean, a plane is $1 million plane, an investment, and you just would move to operating these drones. What does that look like for daily operations?
Daily operations, kind of like everything, you want it to be a crawl, walk, run. So initially, we want to take the drone or these autonomous drones that can operate off the same airport and put them in situations that are more dangerous for the pilot to get them out of those situations. So maybe a bunch of power lines or really small field with trees on all the borders, put a drone in that situation so it can go a little slower and kind of keep the pilot and the big airplane running on fields that are much more open and kind of better for everybody. That would be an example of a crawl. Walks and runs can be all sorts of different situations, but the ag aviation industry is 104 years old, and it's been a really nice steady climb, and eventually these things kind of just go through big changes, and this is a moment where it will go through big change. As far as businesses and pilots, and should I be a crop duster or should I just worry about drones? I like to say cowboys still ride horses, so there'll always be a spot for that airplane where it makes the most efficient sense, and you shouldn't be worried about doing either. They're both really good careers, and the U.S. needs them for sure.
Well, thank you for that perspective because I've got 3 generations of aerial applicators in my family, so I just kind of want to get a big picture on that, and I think what you said makes good sense.
Yep, no problem.
Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the previous reps kind of alluded to it too, but what specifically, what do you need from us? Because a lot of this would be FAA regulated, but what can we do to help?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. First is just, to be aware of what you're working on, that we exist. We're happy to have people out to visit at any time. So if you run into people in the hallways and maybe find some synergies there with drones, think of us, remember us, and know that we can help. And other things that we would need is, as we move forward and look for how to build, state capabilities to, be available for us to talk to and bounce ideas off of and kind of support the vision of what we hope we can continue to build.
Wasn't there an item in the appropriations bill for your industry?
I think, yep.
Tell him what that was,
Mm-hmm.
how we're helping already.
Sure. Yeah, so the initial ask there was for some money to help begin this beyond visual line of sight environment, and it's a capability for the state. So again, with the relationships and partnerships with people we work with, try to get Kansas on the board and to look forward for more investment and assistance on that later, to continue to be a really attractive place for these companies to land and to call home.
If I may continue, and I know the Highway Patrol incorporates drones, but probably on a smaller basis. I don't know if this would be space for them to tote up some flare cameras and stuff. I don't know if you've had any interface with that or.
I have not interfaced with them, but it's absolutely an opportunity to work with all industries.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what about the technology you're using there as far as like a safety backup within small aircraft? If something happens to the pilot, could it possibly land itself?
Yeah, fantastic question. I tell people it's like the beepers on your Toyota Corolla. You're backing up and there's something there, beep, beep, beep. It'd be really nice to have something like that in general aviation that's cheap and affordable, and why not develop something like that here? I think that's a good idea.
And then one more if I could, but you had mentioned in your write-up here about the radar volumes, but you also mentioned LiDAR. So you're doing LiDAR maps in conjunction with the radar or what?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Representative Minnix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many years ago, we equipped our emergency preparedness director with a small drone when there was a fire and the firemen thought they had it out fairly well. He would send up his little quadcopter and with heat detectors determine if there's a hot spot out there yet for them to go back to. And it was interesting to find out that someone lost at the state park, they could use the same quadcopter and the heat detection and find a small child who'd wandered away from his family. Well, later on, they used it in law enforcement to find someone trying to elude the police that was hiding in a cornfield. That quadcopter could just move over and locate the person, and they could talk to them through a speaker and stuff. But our emergency preparedness director was restricted to line of sight. With your technology of beyond visual line of sight, BVOS, that really increases the potential for all of those types of operations here in the state of Kansas, which we currently don't have as far as I'm aware of. Anyway, besides fire detection and ag, maybe lost children and criminals might be something else you'd want to add to your business plan. But anyway, I congratulate you and thank you for your presentation.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Isn't there already a waiver for public safety on line of sight, or am I not remembering right?
There have been some issued in other states at certain junctures. I don't know if anybody in the state of Kansas has one with a smaller, under 55-pound drone. It's a little easier to get some of this beyond visual line of sight capabilities, but it's case by case. Differs.
Representative O'Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Representative Delperdang had a question I had asked, but I'm good. Thank you.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, beyond visual line of sight, is that by necessity autonomous, or is any of the stuff that's being tested in the range, like using repeaters to do controlled flight beyond line of sight?
Maybe like an example of you're just controlling it still manually,
Yeah.
not an autonomous way. Yes, yeah. There are some companies looking at that too. Beyond visual line of sight environment, these radars give you the opportunity to kind of surveil, to know what's around you and have, you know, a mile and a half worth of heads up of what you should be doing if you are on a certain mission.
Then my other question was, is there any prohibition on doing this commercially within that test range now? Can people that have these aircraft get paid to crop dust now inside that test range?
We can bring them to the path of final commercialization, and once they hit that, then you can begin commercial operations. As far as them using a testing environment bird to gain commercial dollars or something like that, it's not permitted by the FAA right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a human controller interaction with the drone? I assume you program in everything and the drone flies its route and does itself, comes back and lands and shuts down. But can you talk to it?
Yeah, you can control it. It uses Starlink, right, or LTE, so it's always in communication with you, and you can take over control. For example, just for PICA example, if it finds an obstacle in the field it didn't know was going to be there, it goes into a loiter, so it pulls up and just spins, and you tell it what to do. As far as figuring that out in a beyond visual line of sight environment for Kansas or for the U.S., nobody has been able to begin doing that until us this year. So there's a lot of questions we'll have to figure out.
Well, the nexus for my question came from a question over on the other side of the room, had to do with operating around airports.
Yeah.
You know, the drone is on a pre-programmed route, altitude, speed, or whatever. And then you get a Cessna aircraft that's a little bit off course, off altitude, that is a collision potential. Is there a way to maneuver the drone out of the path of that type of situation?
Yes, yep. So you can take manual control and do that. You can also, with beyond visual line of sight radar capability, you could see that whole situation unfolding in front of your eyes and understand how to protect your assets and keep everybody out of harm's way. And to lean back on partnerships, a partnership with the University of Fairbanks, Alaska. I mean, they have done this type of environment and testing with full-size Cessna aircraft where they've done this. So in a situation, if we were going to work with a company to test something like that, which we'll have to eventually, we'll ask them how did this work and what are the best practices.
One last one. Have you ever lost a drone?
We have not, no.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, that's part of building aircraft is that you have to plan for these types of situations. So there's, you know, ways to land it safely. You know, if you lose communication, it just comes home, and how to deal with flyaways and stuff like that. So.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, if I could, once you guys get all operational, it'd be great to have them come back and let us know how you're doing and what's happening. Thanks again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Wilborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the what I consider exciting presentation. If I heard you correctly, did you say Oklahoma was the most drone friendly?
Yeah, they according to that study, they were ranked the most ready to have drone commerce in their state. It was a commerce specific study.
And we're kind of like 32. Did I hear you say that?
Yep.
Can we clone what they have done and bring it forth so we can see some of the things so we get a little head start?
Yeah, we'd love to do that.
I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, I've got just a couple. What's the heaviest payload of the drone that you guys work with primarily now?
Heaviest payload at the moment is 1,300 pounds, but there are some that are pushing, they're not in Kansas yet, but they're pushing a ton, right? They're pushing 2,000 pounds.
Well, okay, and so when we were talking earlier, how many gallons of water can that 1,300 pound
100,
or chemical or whatever?
100 gallons.
And that weighs 1,300 pounds?
That was 1,300 pounds.
Wow. I'm not in touch with reality very often. So in this application, are you primarily doing like a fixed wing type thing, or is it kind of some kind of helicopter-y thing?
There's a complete mix of all of it. Almost anything you could dream up on paper, people are trying, and we support the innovation.
And so then does this somehow, or can it work in conjunction with like, these John Deere combines now, they'll map the yield on a field. Are there applications where we can use those maps and then you need to go in and spray something for some reason or another?
I appreciate the question. We're actually launching, I call it the Advanced Agronomy Program, to take situations where you can do year-over-year precision agriculture and start to understand your farm and your soil on even a more resolute level, which, maybe if you could treat your field on a little 50-acre or 50-foot pieces at a time, can't really do that with a big ground rig right now or a big air tractor, but with drones you sure could, and that brings a lot of excitement and opportunities for growers, money back in their pockets, and better ways to raise more. So absolutely.
There's no further question. And thanks a lot for coming and presenting to us. I think this is kind of cutting edge technology and Kansas needs to be at the forefront of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, committee. For the rest of the week, tomorrow we'll have Kansas Department of Transportation is going to present on their road usage charge pilot. And then Thursday, we have a hearing on SB 8, which is move over bill that came to us from the Senate. And so if there's nothing further for the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you.